If an asset becomes liquid enough to be worth $1 trillion in some jurisdictions, you can bet that an ETF will be developed on top of it. Furthermore, the United States of America has a system of checks and balances known as separation of powers. Thus, the SEC was unsuccessful in court, despite its lack of desire for this. Now that more individuals have access to it, there are pools of cash, retirement accounts, and managed assets for those who desire it. Plus, many of them have had trouble getting to it. Unfortunately, they are no longer able to do so. Many investors are wary of these products and how they might affect the dominant cryptocurrency network, even if the approval of 12-spot Bitcoin ETFs in the US has increased demand for Bitcoin. Some have voiced worries about future expropriation, centralization, and the possibility of Bitcoin being used for other purposes. Renowned investment strategist and macro analyst Lyn Alden acknowledges that these concerns are partially correct, but she contends that the benefits of the Bitcoin ETF significantly surpass the dangers. Alden thinks these ETF may help Bitcoin a lot, and he hopes they do their part to keep it growing and improving. It was certain to happen, in her opinion, and it's great news for the future of the cryptocurrency. Oh, and there have been cumulative imbalances. Because of this massive release valve, a lot of capital can finally escape that big entrapment and go to other places that are either cheaper or better managed, which has been an issue because they could only access it in grayscale. Consequently, I believe that's a process that can't be avoided. The worries about centralization, in my opinion, are exaggerated. I mean, it's fair to bring them up. I just think there was a significant amount of Bitcoin sitting in grayscale to begin with. At the moment, it's going around to several other companies like BlackRock and Fidelity. In such settings, the entire pie is expanding at a moderate rate. There are a lot of folks who would rather be there. Make self-custody pretty easy for folks while making sure they realize the risks that is, my opinion. However, I believe that, once again, individuals just have more freedom of choice now. Lots of people wanted Bitcoin but were unable to get it in their form. These new choices are available to them. They have assets held by an Araya, but that advisor is either reluctant or unable to invest some of those funds in Bitcoin. At last, they have the opportunity. In the end, I believe that to be unavoidable. It will happen regardless of how fantastic or horrible it is, I see. So I don't hear anyone claiming that Bitcoin strayed from its original purpose just because exchange-traded funds ETFs are available for it. As far as we can tell, Bitcoin was left out of the ETFs. Using the monetary system, Bitcoin ETFs were created. And with that, the monetary system essentially integrated Bitcoin into its APIs through this means ETFs provide a gateway into several asset groups. They have chosen to integrate Bitcoin at this time. Also, be wary of large centralized honeypots like Binance or exchange-traded funds ETFs. Having a large number of Bitcoin held by a single custodian always poses some sort of danger. Coinbase is where a lot of them are at the moment. That isn't optimal in my opinion. People should exercise caution because of that, in my opinion. It is recommended that you spread your holdings across different custodians if you intend to hold ETFs. I do believe that self-custody is beneficial, though. Therefore, we will observe the outcome of that in due course. I believe, though, that this was always going to be a necessary step for Bitcoin to take in order to reach its current level of prominence. In my opinion, though, danger lurks. Bitcoin is already well designed. There's a limit to the size of a block, after all. However, I think this is all overstated. In the end, I believe that market forces will determine everything. Looking at Bitcoin from a basic perspective, it is the most decentralized and unchangeable database that humanity has yet created. In my opinion, money is the most compelling use case for that. If your decentralized open ledger is top-notch, money is the most significant adjustment market for it. In today's money, that's the equivalent of a $100 trillion market. There's a huge market there. In principle, there is a massive total adjustable market for that. Not only that, but you may use timestamps to establish that other things were not updated. Future meme tokens are available for use. For the most immutable database, I believe the majority of those fat situations are non-monetary and have a market value of no more than a few $1 trillion. In my opinion, the monetary use case is far more dense when looking at the big picture. A far larger market exists. It disregards that as well. In my opinion, Bitcoin will inevitably go through manias and fads as it gains traction and more people start to see its potential uses. In my opinion, they eventually exhaust themselves. If you look at the altcoin sector, you'll notice that there are cycles of boom and bust. After one major boom, people forget about the previous one. On to the next great boom they go. The present cycle isn't quite groundbreaking, but it does include transferring some of that other stuff to Bitcoin? I believe so. This will have a significant upswing before gradually leveling off. Eventually, someone will come up with something new, and it will become trendy. While that's happening, it can be quite disturbing. In the end, though, I don't think it's really economically sound. Assuming there is interest in, and demand for, meme coins, an infinite supply will flood the market until demand is met, at which point anyone who purchased meme coins will essentially be left broke. After that, the money goes to the miners, which is frustrating for anyone who were hoping to make a monetary transaction using Bitcoin at that time, but their money is still safe in the end. Everyone who staked on JPEGs and, mean money is now filthy rich with the exception of the few top sharks. Basically, they were just chilling and making money off of it. Those sharks actually make money, while the majority of people end up losing. After that, it returns to a more stable state. Therefore, I believe that is a necessary component of what it must undergo. It was around 2010 when I first heard about Bitcoin. I also never considered myself to be one of those who took an antagonistic stance toward it. Oh, that's stupid was never an emotion I felt. However, I was wondering what are the odds that it will work that could also be interesting. I keep meaning to devote more time to it, but I never seem to find the time. I see. So it's not particularly enthusiastic about it. I'm rooting for those guys, we say. But what are the odds that this is the real deal when it comes to high-interest loans? But if you observe it over its 3 cycles, you'll see that it goes through a major adoption cycle, a 75% or more drop, a recovery, another big cycle, and then another dip. At the end of each cycle, I would check the ecosystem too. Make sure the user experience was improving. Finally, I realized that in order to comprehend this, I would need to devote some time to it. Thus, I accomplished that in 2017. Then I observed the unfolding of the block size war. That was all really illuminating. Put simply, in a way, it demonstrated how things work in reality, such as who has power over the network and how unchangeable its laws are. In this field, how exactly do network effects function? For all intents and purposes, Bitcoin is control logic. This is a system. How stable is this system? As you observe its operation in various settings, the answer becomes clear, yes. And so basically once I saw, if Bitcoin reaches critical mass and proves to be relatively unbreakable as I predicted, and if large network effects become the norm, the cryptocurrency might become unstoppable. Subsequently, that now has macro-level consequences. Money with macro ramifications exists that moves faster than fiat but is scarcer than gold. For instance, on this planet, you can find 160 distinct fiat currencies. They are all monopolies within their own jurisdictions, and each of them has a few means to exert control over that monopoly. One is that, as one might expect, all currencies other than their own are subject to taxation in that jurisdiction. 2 other things, aren't they in charge of the country's immigration policies? So before Bitcoin, there were essentially 2 primary methods to inject wealth into a nation. One is entry points, which are plainly easy to spy on. Only a small fraction makes it through. The second is the monitoring and control of incoming and outgoing wire transactions. In contrast, if you have internet money, I can send a QR code to anyone in that country by simply having them hold up the code during a video conversation. I can receive a payment string from them. The frontiers of that money are now much more porous, so every person in that country with an internet connection can acquire money from outside. That way, more of them can take part in the global free market of currencies, and less of them can stay stuck in their local monopoly. So they have the option to request US stablecoins to be held for the next 3 months instead of Egyptian pounds, which is similar to stablecoin to a certain degree. Plus, they're all in one place, but now it's a money market. They are essentially stating that they would